The moment Alpha King Damon Blackwood pressed his hand against the servant's door, the bond he thought was broken screamed back to life, but the scent that hit him wasn't hers alone. It was blood. And wolfsbane. And something ancient that made his wolf howl in recognition. He stumbled back, his palm burning where it had touched the worn wood. 3 years. 3 years since he'd felt anything through that severed connection, and now it roared through him like wildfire through dry brush. Impossible. His wolf clawed at the edges of his control, frantic in a way Damon hadn't experienced since he was a boy learning to master the beast inside him. He was the Alpha King, ruler of 7 packs, commander of armies. He did not lose control. But his hand was already pushing the door open. The servants' corridor stretched before him, narrow and dim, lit only by flickering torches that cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. He shouldn't be here. The northern delegation awaited him in the great hall. Lady Seraphina, his betrothed, expected him at her side for the evening's festivities. None of it mattered. He moved through the passage like a predator tracking wounded prey, his senses straining for another trace of that impossible scent. Blood and wolfsbane, yes, but underneath it, buried like a whisper beneath a scream, was something else. Something that made his bones ache with recognition. Moon lilies and rain. He stopped walking. His heart stopped beating. That scent had haunted him for 3 years. It crept into his dreams and poisoned his waking hours. It was the scent of his greatest failure, his deepest shame, the scent of the Omega Maid he'd rejected on the night of his coronation. Elara. But Elara was gone. She'd vanished into the night after he'd spoken the words of rejection, after he'd watched the light die in her silver eyes and done nothing to stop it. His scouts had searched for months. She was dead, or as good as dead to him. So why could he smell her now? Damon found her in the kitchens. She stood with her back to him, scrubbing pots in a basin of gray water. Her hair was darker than he remembered, dyed, he realized, to hide its distinctive pale gold. She was thinner too, her shoulders sharp beneath the rough fabric of her servant's dress. But it was her. Even with her scent masked by whatever herbs she'd rubbed into her skin, even with her wolf seemingly dormant. Silent in a way that should have been impossible, he knew her. His wolf knew her. Mate, the beast howled. Ours. You're new, he said. His voice came out rough, barely controlled. She didn't turn around. Started last week, Your Majesty. The title was a knife between his ribs. She'd called him Damon once, just once, in the brief hours between discovering their bond and his destruction of it. Her voice had trembled with wonder. Now it was flat. Empty. What's your name? Mira, Your Majesty. A lie. He could taste it on the air, bitter as the wolfsbane that clung to her skin. He should call her on it. He should demand to know where she'd been, why she'd come back, what she was hiding. Instead, he watched her scrub at a pot that was already clean, her movements mechanical and precise. She never once looked at him. You shouldn't be in the servants' quarters, she said. People will talk. Let them. She finally turned, and the impact of her gaze nearly brought him to his knees. Silver eyes, pale as moonlight. Eyes that had wept silent tears as he'd rejected her before the entire court, as he'd chosen duty and politics over the sacred bond the moon goddess herself had forged. Eyes that now held nothing but cold, careful emptiness. Your betrothed is waiting for you. She said it without inflection. The Northern Pack delegation expects their Alpha King. How do you know about the delegation? He wanted to ask. Why have you come back? What happened to you? But the questions died in his throat, because beneath the wolfsbane and the blood, beneath the herbs she used to mask her scent, he caught something else. Something wrong. Her wolf wasn't dormant. It was different. The energy that pulsed from her, faint, heavily suppressed, didn't feel like any wolf he'd ever encountered. It was older. Deeper. Like touching a current of power that ran straight down to the bones of the earth. I'll go, he said slowly. But this conversation isn't over. For just a moment, something flickered in those silver eyes. Grief, maybe. Or rage. Or both twisted together into something new and terrible. It was over 3 years ago, Your Majesty. She turned back to her pots. You made sure of that. He tried to stay away. For 3 nights, Damon forced himself to attend the endless diplomatic functions, to smile at Lady Seraphina's barbed pleasantries, to pretend that he wasn't slowly going mad. The Northern Pack alliance was critical. Without it, war with the Eastern Territories was inevitable. Thousands would die. His duty was clear. His duty had always been clear. But on the 4th night, when the moon hung heavy and full above the palace, he found himself following Alara through the servants' passages once again. She moved like a ghost through the torchlit corridors, never looking back, never hesitating. She knew exactly where she was going. And she knew, somehow, that he was behind her. He could see it in the slight tension of her shoulders, the careful control of her breathing. She didn't try to stop him. They descended deeper into the palace than Damon had ever been, past the wine cellars and the storage rooms, past the dungeons where prisoners rotted and wept. The air grew cold and stale. The torches became fewer, then vanished altogether, leaving only the silver glow of moonlight filtering through cracks in the ancient stone. Finally, Alara stopped before a door. It was unremarkable, heavy oak, banded with iron, indistinguishable from 100 other doors in the palace foundations. But when Damon looked closer, he saw the seal. His family's seal. The blackwood crest had been carved into the iron bands, so old that the lines had nearly worn away. This door hadn't been opened in a very, very long time. This chamber has been sealed for 200 years, he said. How do you know about it? Alara pressed her palm to the wood. Because it's been calling to me since the night you rejected me. Light flared beneath her hand, not the golden glow of wolf power, but something silver and strange. The seal responded, ancient mechanisms grinding to life. The door swung open on hinges that should have rusted shut centuries ago. She stepped inside. Damon followed. The chamber was small, circular, carved from raw stone. Moonlight poured through a hole in the ceiling, illuminating a pedestal at the room's center. On the pedestal sat a chest bound in silver chains. What is this place? Damon's voice echoed strangely, as if the walls were swallowing his words. A tomb, Alara said. And a prison. And a promise. She approached the chest, and Damon grabbed her arm. The contact sent electricity racing through his veins, the bond howling with recognition. For one moment, her careful mask slipped, and he saw pain so raw it stole his breath. Then it was gone, and she was pulling free of his grip. Don't touch me, she said quietly. You lost that right. Alara. My name is Mira now. She opened the chest. Alara died the night you chose your throne over your mate. Inside the chest, wrapped in cloth that crumbled at her touch, lay a collection of ancient texts. The pages were yellow and brittle, covered in writing that seemed to shift and move in the moonlight. Alara, Mira, picked up the first book, and the silver light in the room intensified. It was coming from her, Damon realized. Pouring from her skin like moonlight made liquid. Do you know why the Alpha bloodline exists? She asked. Do you know where your power comes from? The moon goddess blessed our ancestors. The moon goddess blessed my ancestors. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were no longer empty. They blazed with silver fire. The original Luna line. The wolves who stood beneath the first full moon and received her gift directly. They created the Alpha bloodline. Chose the strongest among them and gifted a portion of their power, creating kings to rule while they guided from the shadows. Damon's mouth went dry. That's legend. Myth. All myths are truth dressed in comfortable lies. She held up the ancient text. I am the last. The final heir to the original Luna bloodline. When you rejected me, you didn't break our bond, Damon. She stepped closer, and the power rolling off her pressed against his chest like a physical weight. You woke something that has been sleeping in my blood for 2,000 years. Something that your ancestors feared so much they sealed their own records away and hoped everyone would forget. What are you saying? The silver fire in her eyes flickered. For just a moment, he saw the girl she'd been, the Omega Maid who'd looked at him with such wonder and hope, who'd believed that the bond between them meant something sacred and true. Then that girl was gone, burned away by whatever she'd become. I'm saying that I am not your rejected mate, Alara whispered. I am your creator. Your origin. The source of everything you are. The texts in her hands began to glow, ancient words rising from the pages like smoke. And you, Alpha King Damon Blackwood, have made a very terrible mistake. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. Alara hadn't planned to tell him any of it. She'd spent 3 years building walls around herself, brick by careful brick. 3 years learning to breathe through the constant ache of a severed bond. 3 years mastering the strange and terrible gifts that had awakened in her blood the night she died on a riverbank 60 miles from the palace, her body broken, her wolf silent, her heart stopping for 3 endless minutes while the moon watched and did nothing. When she'd gasped back to life, choking on river water and her own blood, everything had changed. Now she stood in the sealed chamber of his ancestors, silver fire coursing through her veins, and watched the Alpha King of 7 Packs stare at her like she'd reached into his chest and ripped out everything he thought he knew. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt. You're lying. His voice was hoarse. This is some trick. You know I'm not. She closed the ancient text, and the glowing words faded back into the yellowed pages. Your wolf knows. It's been howling since you touched that door. It recognizes me, even if you refuse to. Damon took a step back. The great Alpha King, commander of armies, retreating from a kitchen maid. Under different circumstances, she might have found it satisfying. But satisfaction was a luxury she'd abandoned long ago, along with hope and trust and the foolish belief that fate meant something. The original Luna bloodline died out centuries ago, he said. Every historian agrees. Every historian was fed a carefully constructed lie. Alara tucked the text into the folds of her servant's dress. Your great-great-grandfather made sure of it. He feared what would happen if people remembered the truth about where Alpha power really came from. So he burned the records, sealed this chamber, and told the Packs that the original line had simply faded away. Why would he do that? Because the original Lunas could take back what they'd given. She met his eyes. And your ancestor had done something unforgivable to his mate. The parallel hung in the air between them, sharp as a blade. Damon's jaw tightened. I did what I had to do. The council demanded. I know exactly what the council demanded. 3 years of suppressed rage flickered at the edges of her control. I was there, remember? Standing in that throne room in my best dress, the only nice thing I owned. While you looked at me like I was dirt on your boots. While you told the entire court that you would never bind yourself to a worthless Omega who had nothing to offer the crown. Alara. Don't. The word came out sharp enough to cut. Don't say my name like it means something to you. You made your choice. You chose your throne and your council and your precious political alliances. You don't get to pretend that hurts you now. She pushed past him toward the chamber door, and the bond between them screamed at the proximity. Even severed, even scarred over with 3 years of pain, it still recognized him. Still wanted him. She hated that most of all. The servants' quarters were quiet at this hour, most of the staff either sleeping or finishing the last of the evening's cleanup. Alara made her way through the narrow corridors on autopilot, her mind churning through everything she'd just revealed. She shouldn't have told him. The plan had been to stay hidden, to work quietly in the shadows, to stop the assassination and disappear before anyone realized who she really was. But something about standing in that chamber, surrounded by the history his family had tried to erase, had cracked her careful control. 3 years of silence, and she'd spilled her secrets to the last person in the world who deserved them. Stupid, she muttered, pressing her palm against her forehead. Stupid, stupid. A vision slammed into her without warning. She staggered against the corridor wall, her eyes rolling back as images flooded her mind. A council chamber. Faces she recognized, Lord Aldrich with his silver beard, Lady Moira with her cold smile, others whose names she'd learned in the weeks since her return. They were arguing, voices raised, and at the center of it all stood a figure in shadow. The Northern Alliance must hold, someone said. If the king dies before the wedding. The king will die when we decide he dies, the shadowed figure replied. And the Omega problem has already been solved. I made sure of that 3 years ago. The vision shifted. A coronation platform. Herself, 3 years younger, being led forward by guards who wouldn't meet her eyes. She'd always assumed she'd been identified as Damon's mate through some twist of fate, some cruel joke of the moon goddess. But now she saw what she'd missed before. Lord Aldrich in the crowd, watching with satisfaction as she was presented. Lord Aldrich, who had insisted the bond ceremony proceed immediately despite tradition. Lord Aldrich, who had whispered something to Damon just before the rejection. A worthless Omega, the old lord had said. Think of what the council will say. Think of the alliance with the North. You cannot bind yourself to nothing. The vision shattered, and Alara found herself on her knees in the corridor, gasping for breath. Someone had made sure she was presented as Damon's mate that day. Someone had wanted him to reject her. But why? What could anyone gain from severing the bond between an Alpha King and an original Luna heir? Unless they'd known what she was. Unless they'd feared what she might become. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, Alara sat in her tiny room in the servants' wing and spread out everything she knew. The visions that had driven her back to the palace. The assassination that would occur in 7 days. The war that would follow, destroying all 5 packs in a cascade of violence that painted her dreams red. And now this new piece, the plot hadn't started with the assassination. It had started 3 years ago, on the night of Damon's coronation, when someone had looked at a newly discovered mate bond and seen not a blessing but a threat. Lord Aldrich. She wrote his name on a scrap of paper, then added a question mark. He was old, powerful, had served on the council since Damon's father's reign. He had every reason to want stability, to support traditional alliances over the chaos of a commoner Luna. But was that enough to orchestrate an assassination 3 years later? She closed her eyes and reached for her wolf. The creature that lived inside her now was nothing like the small, timid beast she'd carried before the rejection. That wolf had been quiet, easily overlooked, Omega in every sense of the word. This wolf was something else entirely. Show me, she asked. Help me understand. Power stirred in her blood. Silver light flickered behind her eyelids. But the visions that came were fragmented, unclear, glimpses of faces she didn't recognize, conversations she couldn't quite hear. One image crystallized with sudden clarity, Lady Seraphina, Damon's betrothed, sitting in a garden alcove with someone whose face was hidden in shadow. The northern noblewoman was laughing, but her eyes were cold. The kitchen maid, Seraphina said. She seems familiar, doesn't she? I could swear I've seen her before. The vision faded, and Alara's blood ran cold. Seraphina was investigating her. The next 3 days were an exercise in careful avoidance. Alara kept her head down, her scent masked, her wolf tightly controlled. She scrubbed pots and washed linens and pretended she didn't feel Damon's presence every time he passed through the palace. The bond between them had grown stronger since the chamber. Whatever she'd awakened by touching those ancient texts had intensified the connection she'd thought was dead. She felt his confusion. His anger. His guilt, buried so deep he probably didn't even recognize it himself. And underneath all of it, threading through his emotions like poison, was his desire for her. 3 years hadn't killed it. His engagement to another woman hadn't killed it. The mate bond they'd both tried to deny was still there, still burning, and every time they were in the same room, it took all of Alara's hard-won control not to reach for him. She hated him for that too. On the fourth day, Lady Seraphina cornered her in the laundry. "You." The northern noblewoman appeared in the doorway, her pale blue gown immaculate, her golden hair arranged in elaborate curls. "The new kitchen maid. Mira, isn't it?" Alara kept her eyes down. "Yes, my lady. Look at me." The command carried alpha weight, not as strong as Damon's, but enough to make Alara's wolf bristle. She looked up slowly, keeping her expression blank. Seraphina studied her with eyes the color of winter ice. "Where are you from?" "A village in the Eastern Territories, my lady. My family died in the border conflicts. I came here looking for work." "The Eastern Territories." Seraphina's perfect lips curved. "How convenient. I don't suppose you attended the king's coronation 3 years ago?" Alara's heart stuttered, but she kept her voice steady. "I was just a child then, my lady. And my family had no connections to court." Seraphina circled her slowly, predator assessing prey. "There's something about you. Something familiar. I can't quite place it." "She knows," Alara's wolf growled. "She suspects. I have a common face, my lady." Alara ducked her head again. "People often think they've seen me before." "Perhaps." Seraphina stopped in front of her. "But I have an excellent memory for faces. Especially faces that might pose a problem for my future husband." The threat was clear. Alara said nothing. After a long moment, Seraphina smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "You may go, Mira. But do stay out of trouble. The palace can be a dangerous place for servants who attract too much attention." She swept out of the laundry, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and subtle menace in her wake. Alara waited until she was gone, then let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the folding table and tried to think. Seraphina knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. And in 3 days, someone was going to assassinate Damon, and Alara still didn't know who or how or why. She needed more information. She needed to get closer to the council. She needed. The door opened again, and this time it was Damon. He looked terrible. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually immaculate clothes were rumpled, as if he'd been running his hands through them. His wolf was close to the surface. She could see it in the golden glow of his irises, the barely contained energy that radiated from his body. "We need to talk," he said. "We have nothing to talk about, Your Majesty." "Don't." He stepped into the laundry and closed the door behind him. "Don't call me that. Not when we're alone. We shouldn't be alone. Your betrothed was just here, asking questions about the suspicious kitchen maid. I don't think she'd appreciate finding you in a laundry closet with the help. I don't care what Seraphina appreciates." The words hung in the air between them. Alara stared at him, thrown off balance despite herself. "The Northern Alliance. I know what the Northern Alliance means." Damon moved closer, and the bond between them hummed with renewed intensity. "I know what's at stake. I've known for 3 years, every single day, exactly what I sacrificed and why." "Then why are you here?" "Because I can't stop thinking about what you said in that chamber." His voice dropped, rough with emotion he wasn't quite controlling. "About the original Luna line. About what my ancestors did. About what I..." He stopped, jaw tight. "About what you did?" Alara finished quietly. "You can say it. You rejected your fated mate to marry a political alliance. It's not a secret. It's killing me." The confession slipped out like a wound tearing open. Alara felt the truth of it through the bond. 3 years of guilt and longing and self-hatred, all of it buried under duty and denial. She should have been satisfied. She should have felt vindicated, knowing that he'd suffered too. Instead, she just felt tired. It doesn't matter, she said. I didn't come back for revenge, Damon. I didn't come back for you at all. Then why are you here? The question she'd been dreading. The truth she couldn't tell him, not yet, not without risking everything. I have my reasons. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She tried to push past him, but he caught her arm. The contact was electric, the bond roaring to life between them with an intensity that stole her breath. She felt his heartbeats sync with hers, felt his wolf reaching for the creature inside her, felt 3 years of separation compress into a single moment of devastating connection. His eyes widened. What? Let go of me. I can feel you. Wonder and horror mingled in his voice. The bond. It's not broken. It's different. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Let go. What happened to you? He was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. After you left, after you disappeared, what happened? I died. The word fell between them like a stone into still water. 3 minutes, Elara continued, her voice flat. My heart stopped for 3 minutes. And when I came back, everything had changed. My wolf had changed. I could feel things I'd never felt before, see things I was never meant to see. Elara. I told you not to call me that. But he wasn't listening. He was staring at their joined hands, at the silver light that was beginning to pulse beneath her skin. You're glowing, he breathed. I can't control it when you're touching me. She finally wrenched her arm free, stumbling backward. The bond amplifies everything. That's why I've been staying away from you. That's why I masked my scent and hid my wolf and took a false name. Because every time I get close to you, I lose control of what I've become. What have you become? The question hung in the air. Elara looked at him, at this man who had destroyed her and saved her, who had broken her heart and forged her into something new, who had no idea that someone in his own court was counting down the days until his death. I don't know, she admitted. But I know that I see things now. The future. Glimpses of what's coming. And I know. The vision hit her like a physical blow. She crumpled, would have fallen if Damon hadn't caught her. But his touch only made it worse, the bond amplifying her power until the images overwhelmed her completely. A garden at night. Roses and moonlight. Damon on the ground, blood pooling beneath him, his eyes open and empty. And standing over him, a smile on her perfect face, blood on her elegant hands. Lady Seraphina. Elara gasped back to reality, her whole body shaking. Damon was holding her, his face tight with concern, his wolf pressing against hers with desperate worry. What did you see? He demanded. Elara, what did you see? She looked up at him, at the man who had rejected her, abandoned her, driven her to the death that had transformed her into whatever she was now. At the man she was going to save anyway. Seraphina, she whispered. In 3 days, she's going to kill you. Chapter 3. Damon didn't sleep that night. He sat in his chambers as the hours crawled past, Elara's words echoing through his skull like a death knell. Seraphina is going to kill you. The woman he'd chosen over his fated mate. The woman he'd bound his kingdom to through political necessity. The woman who had smiled at him over dinner just hours ago, her hand resting possessively on his arm. A murderer. He wanted to dismiss it. Elara had every reason to lie, every reason to want Seraphina removed from the picture. 3 years of abandonment and pain could twist anyone's heart toward vengeance. But he'd felt the truth of her vision through the bond. He'd felt her terror, her certainty, the bone-deep conviction that what she'd seen was real. Whatever else had changed about Elara, whatever powers she'd developed in her time away, she wasn't lying. Which meant someone he'd trusted was planning to kill him. His wolf paced inside him, agitated and restless. The beast had never liked Seraphina. Damon had always attributed that to the incomplete bond, to the animal's stubborn loyalty to a mate they'd rejected. Now he wondered if the wolf had sensed something he'd been too blind to see. "We should have listened," the beast growled. "We should have chosen her." "I know," Damon murmured to the empty room. "I know." He began watching Serafina the next morning. It required a level of deception that sat poorly with him. He smiled at her over breakfast, complimented her gown, played the role of devoted fiancé while his eyes tracked her every movement. She was good, he had to give her that. Nothing in her manner suggested anything other than a noble woman focused on her upcoming wedding. But then, the best predators always looked harmless until they struck. The first crack in her facade appeared after lunch. Damon excused himself from a meeting with the trade delegation, claiming a headache, and doubled back through the servants' passages. He found Serafina in a private alcove off the east wing, deep in conversation with Lord Aldrich. Their voices were too low for even his wolf hearing to catch, but he could read their body language. Tension. Urgency. And when Aldrich handed her a folded piece of parchment, Serafina's eyes darted around the corridor before she tucked it into her bodice. Not the behavior of an innocent woman. He followed her for the rest of the day, keeping to the shadows, using every skill his father had taught him about moving unseen. Serafina met with 3 more council members before dinner, Lord Aldrich again, Lady Moira, and his own Uncle Marcus. Each conversation was brief, secretive, and ended with the same furtive exchange of glances. That night, after the household had retired, Damon crept to Serafina's chambers. The lock was simple enough to pick. A skill he'd learned as a boy, to the horror of his tutors. The room beyond was immaculate, every surface gleaming, every item precisely arranged. Serafina's perfume hung in the air, cloying and sweet. He searched methodically, checking under furniture and behind tapestries, running his fingers along the walls for hidden panels. Nothing. The room was clean. Then he found the drawer. It was built into her vanity, designed to look like decorative molding. He almost missed it entirely, would have if his wolf hadn't caught a familiar scent seeping through the seams. Wolfsbane. His hands trembled as he worked the hidden catch. The drawer slid open with a whisper of well-oiled hinges, revealing a small collection of items, coded letters in a cipher he didn't recognize, a map of the palace with certain rooms marked in red, and a crystal vial filled with pale purple liquid. Damon picked up the vial. The scent hit him immediately. The same wolfsbane he detected on Alara's door that first night. The same poison that had been masking her presence. Why would Serafina have this? Why would she need a substance designed to suppress wolf abilities, to hide someone's true nature? Unless she'd used it before. The thought struck him like a blow. 3 years ago, Alara had been presented as a simple Omega Maid. Her wolf had seemed weak, unremarkable, nothing that would suggest original Luna blood. But what if that had been artificial? What if someone had suppressed her true nature to make the rejection easier? What if Serafina had been involved from the very beginning? He photographed everything with his phone, then replaced each item exactly as he'd found it. His mind was racing, connections forming faster than he could process them. Serafina. The council members. The Northern Alliance that had seemed so critical 3 years ago. He'd been manipulated. They all had. But by whom? Serafina was dangerous, clearly, but she was also young, only 23, barely older than Alara. Could she really have orchestrated a conspiracy that began 3 years before her engagement? No. She was a piece, not a player. Someone else was pulling the strings. Damon found the journals in his father's private study. He'd avoided this room since the old king's death 2 years ago. Too many memories. Too much grief. But now he tore through the shelves with desperate purpose, searching for anything that might explain the conspiracy taking shape around him. His father had been a meticulous man. Every decision documented, every alliance catalogued, every threat assessed and filed. Damon had always admired that precision. Now he prayed it would give him the answers he needed. The relevant journal was dated 4 years ago, a year before the coronation, before Alara, before everything fell apart. The council has presented concerns about the succession, his father had written in his cramped, precise hand. Marcus particularly insistent that we address the matter of a suitable Luna before the coronation. He fears the bond will complicate our northern strategy. Damon's blood ran cold. His uncle Marcus. The man who had sat at his right hand for his entire reign. The man who had counseled him through every difficult decision, who had urged the Northern Alliance with such passionate conviction. He kept reading. Intelligence reports confirmed the girl's identity. Elara Vance, daughter of Catherine Vance, who was sister to the last known original Luna heir. The bloodline was thought to be extinct, but it seems the goddess has other plans. If she bonds with my son at the coronation, the implications are staggering. Marcus believes she must be neutralized before the bond can fully form. Neutralized. His father had known. His father had known exactly who Elara was, what she represented, and had chosen to destroy her anyway. The wolfsbane has been procured, the journal continued. It will suppress her abilities long enough for the rejection to take hold. Marcus assures me the bond cannot recover from such a blow. The girl will leave court, her power will remain dormant, and the threat will be contained. My son will never know what might have been. Damon hurled the journal across the room. It struck the wall and fell open, pages fluttering like wounded birds. His father. His own father had orchestrated everything. Had looked at a sacred mate bond and seen only a threat to be eliminated. Had condemned Elara to 3 years of suffering, to death itself, to protect a throne she had every right to share. And Marcus had been there, whispering in his ear, guiding every terrible decision. Marcus believes she must be neutralized. Not his father's plan, then. His uncle's. Damon retrieved the journal with shaking hands and forced himself to keep reading. I confess I have doubts. The original Luna bloodline exists for a reason, the goddess created them to guide us, to strengthen us. What if eliminating this girl is not protection but folly? What if we doom the kingdom by fearing what we should embrace? Marcus says I am being sentimental. Perhaps he is right. But I cannot shake the feeling that we are making a terrible mistake. The entry ended there. 2 pages later, his father's handwriting changed, shakier, less certain. The coronation is in 3 days. I have changed my mind. I tried to tell Marcus that we should let the bond proceed naturally, trust in the goddess's wisdom. He became agitated. Threatened consequences I did not fully understand. There is something in his eyes now that I do not recognize. I fear I have created a monster. The final entry was dated the night before the coronation. I am not well. The physicians say it is stress, but I know poison when I feel it working through my veins. Marcus visited this afternoon with wine from the Northern Territories. I was a fool to drink it. If anyone reads this, know that I tried to stop what I had started. Know that I loved my son and wanted only to protect him. And know that Marcus Blackwood cannot be trusted. The girl, Elara, she is the key. If she survives what we've done to her, she may be the only one who can stop what's coming. Goddess, forgive me for what I've allowed. His father had died 3 days later. Natural causes, the physicians said. The stress of the coronation, the burden of the crown. But it hadn't been natural at all. His uncle had murdered his father. Had manipulated the rejection of his mate. Had been positioning himself for the throne for years, and Damon had never seen any of it. He found Elara in the gardens at midnight. She was sitting on a stone bench near the roses, her face tilted up toward the stars. In the moonlight, she looked ethereal, silver hair spilling down her back, pale skin luminous, eyes closed in something that might have been meditation or exhaustion. She looked beautiful. And fragile. And nothing like the vengeful specter he would have deserved. I know you're there, she said without opening her eyes. I've known since you entered the garden. Your abilities? I can feel your emotions from 30 feet away. She finally looked at him, and his breath caught at the shadows under her eyes. You're carrying enough guilt and rage to light a bonfire. It's not exactly subtle. He crossed the garden and sat beside her on the bench, leaving a careful distance between them. Even so, the bond hummed with renewed intensity, a constant reminder of what they'd lost and what still remained. I found proof, he said. You were right about Serafina. I know. You know? I had another vision. She rubbed her temples, and he noticed her hands were trembling. While you were searching her rooms. I saw what you found. The wolfsbane. Was used on me 3 years ago. Her voice was flat, emotionless. I've known that for a while. What I didn't know was who provided it. There's more. Damon pulled out his phone and showed her the photographs. Coded letters. A map of the palace. And meetings with half my council. Elara studied the images, her brow furrowed. She's not working alone. No. She's a pawn. He took a breath. I found my father's journals. He knew who you were, what you were, before the coronation. He and my uncle planned everything. The wolfsbane, the rejection, all of it. She went very still. Your uncle. Marcus. The name tasted like ash. He's been manipulating everything from the beginning. He killed my father to keep him quiet. He's been positioning himself for years. The assassination has to be his design. Serafina is just the weapon. Damon's hands clenched into fists. But I still don't understand why. If he wanted the throne, why wait? Why this elaborate conspiracy? Elara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Because he needs you to die at a specific time. In a specific way. What do you mean? The blood moon. She turned to face him, and her silver eyes were dark with exhaustion. It's in 3 days. And I've been having visions about it, fragments, pieces that don't quite fit together. But I know this, your uncle needs you dead before the blood moon rises. And he needs me to be the one who kills you. Damon stared at her. That's insane. You're trying to save me. I know. A bitter laugh escaped her. But your uncle doesn't know that. He thinks the rejection turned me into a weapon he can use. He thinks my powers, the abilities I developed after I died, are tied to my hatred of you. Are they? The question hung between them, raw and honest. I don't know, Elara admitted. I know that I hated you. For a long time, it was the only thing that kept me alive. But somewhere along the way. She shook her head. The visions showed me what happens if you die. War. Destruction. 5 packs torn apart by violence. I couldn't let that happen, no matter what you did to me. Elara. Don't. She held up a hand. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the thousands of innocent people who would die if your uncle succeeds. It was a lie. He could feel it through the bond, not the sentiment, which was real enough, but the simplicity of it. She cared about the innocent lives, yes. But she also cared about him, despite everything. And that was killing her. He'd been so focused on the conspiracy that he hadn't noticed how fragile she'd become. Her skin was too pale, her breathing too shallow, her movements too careful. Every time she used her abilities, she paid a price. How much is this costing you? He asked quietly. The visions. The emotional sensing. All of it. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Elara. How much? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She laughed again, but this time there was no bitterness in it, just exhaustion. You don't get to care about me now, Damon. You gave up that right 3 years ago. I know. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. The bond roared between them, silver light flickering beneath her skin. But I'm going to care anyway. Because you're the only thing standing between me and a grave, and because... He stopped. Because what? She whispered. Because I made the worst mistake of my life when I rejected you. And I'm not going to make another one by letting you destroy yourself to fix my failures. Her eyes glistened with tears she was too proud to shed. It doesn't work like that. The power, it takes what it takes. I can't control the cost. Then we find another way. Together. There is no together. There's you and your throne and your political alliances, and there's me, a dead woman who was too stubborn to stay that way. She pulled her hand free and stood, swaying slightly. We stop your uncle, we prevent the war, and then I disappear again. That's the only ending that makes sense. Elara. She took a step toward the garden path and stumbled. He caught her before she hit the ground, her body suddenly limp in his arms. Elara. He pressed his fingers to her throat and found her pulse, weak, thready, far too slow. Elara, wake up. Her eyes fluttered open, silver turned to pale gray. She looked up at him, and for a moment she wasn't the hardened survivor who'd returned from the dead. She was the girl from the coronation, the one who'd looked at him with such hope. I'm sorry, she breathed. I tried to hold on longer. But the visions, they take so much. Don't talk. Save your strength. He lifted her easily, too easily, she weighed almost nothing, and started toward the palace. Her head lolled against his chest, her breathing shallow and irregular. Damon, she whispered. I'm here. The blood moon. Your uncle. Her hand clutched weakly at his shirt. I saw the rest. I saw what he's planning. Tell me later. After you've rested. No. You need to know now. Her eyes met his, and even in her weakened state, they burned with desperate intensity. Your uncle needs you dead by the blood moon. And he needs me to do it. Damon's steps faltered. What? The original Luna bloodline, she breathed. We created the alpha power. We can also destroy it. If I kill you during the blood moon, while the bond is still active between us, your power transfers to whoever I choose. To Marcus. Yes. Her eyes drifted closed. He's been planning this for decades. The rejection was supposed to break me, turn me into a weapon he could control. But I died instead. And when I came back, she went limp in his arms. Elara. He shook her gently, but she was unconscious now, her pulse barely detectable. He ran. Chapter 4. Elara drifted in darkness. She was aware, distantly, of being carried. Of warmth surrounding her, a heartbeat beneath her cheek, arms holding her close, the familiar scent of pine and thunderstorms that she tried so hard to forget. The bond pulsed between them like a second heart, feeding her strength she didn't deserve from a man she couldn't trust. But her body was shutting down. 3 years of suppressed power, released too quickly. Visions that burned through her like wildfire. The cost was coming due, and she didn't have enough left to pay it. Let go, something whispered. You've done enough. Let go. It would be easy. Just stop fighting, stop clinging to a life that had brought her nothing but pain. She died once already. She knew it wasn't so bad, just a gentle slide into nothing, a release from the constant ache of existing. But then she felt him. Not just his arms around her or his heartbeat against her ear. She felt him, his terror, his guilt, his desperate need for her to survive. The bond was wide open now, stripped raw by her collapse, and his emotions poured into her like light into a darkened room. He was praying. The Alpha King of 7 Packs, the man who had rejected her before the entire court, was praying to the moon goddess to spare her life. Please, she heard through the bond. Please don't take her. Not now. Not when I just found her again. Elara opened her eyes. She was in his chambers. The realization came slowly, filtered through layers of exhaustion. Rich fabrics surrounded her, deep blue bedding, silver curtains, the blackwood crest embroidered on every surface. She was lying in the Alpha King's bed, wearing nothing but a thin shift that someone had changed her into. Damon sat in a chair beside her, his head bowed, his hands clasped between his knees. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and his clothes were the same ones he'd worn in the garden. How long? Her voice came out as a croak. His head snapped up. Elara. Thank the goddess. He moved to the bed, reaching for her hand, then stopped himself. How long were you unconscious? Almost 18 hours. I had the healers in, but they couldn't. Your body isn't responding like a normal wolf. They didn't know what to do. There's nothing they could have done. She pushed herself up against the pillows, her muscles screaming in protest. My power comes from the original bloodline. Modern healers don't have the knowledge to treat it. Then how do we help you? We. The word caught in her chest like a fishhook. You don't, she said. I just need time. The visions drain me, but I recover. I always have. You almost died. I've almost died before. She met his eyes. I've actually died before. This is nothing. Pain flickered across his features. Guilt and grief and something else she couldn't name. Elara, what you said before you collapsed. About Marcus. About the blood moon. I need to understand. She'd hoped he'd forgotten. Hoped she'd have more time to figure out how to explain the impossible situation they were trapped in. But Damon had never been patient, and 18 hours of sitting by her bedside had clearly done nothing to improve that quality. Help me sit up properly, she said. This is going to take a while. He moved without hesitation, adjusting pillows behind her back, his hands gentle despite their strength. The bond hummed at every point of contact, and she saw him flinch at the intensity of it. It's worse now, he murmured. The bond. Ever since you collapsed. Because I stopped fighting it. She settled back against the pillows. I didn't have the strength to maintain my shields. Everything I've been blocking, the connection, the emotions, all of it, it's been flooding through unchecked. Is that dangerous? For me? No. She paused. For you? Possibly. You're feeling things you suppressed 3 years ago. That's going to be uncomfortable. I deserve uncomfortable. Yes. You do. She took a breath. But that's not what we need to discuss right now. Sit down, Damon. And listen. She told him everything. About the night she'd fled the palace, running blindly through the darkness with the rejection still burning in her chest. About the river she'd tried to cross, the current that had swept her away, the rocks that had broken her body. About dying on a muddy bank with no one to mourn her, her heart stopping while the moon watched in silence. About coming back. I don't know why, she said. The healers I found later, hedge witches, mostly, women who remembered the old ways, they said the original bloodline doesn't die easily. That the goddess has plans for us that can't be thwarted by something as simple as drowning. But you were dead. You said 3 minutes. 3 minutes with no heartbeat, no breath. And when I came back, everything was different. She held up her hand, and silver light flickered beneath her skin. I could feel emotions. See the future. Sense lies. My wolf had changed, evolved into something the hedge witches had only read about in ancient texts. The powers you mentioned. They call it the awakening. It's supposed to happen when an original Luna completes her bond with her destined mate. The combination of bloodlines triggers a transformation, unlocking abilities that have been dormant for generations. Damon's brow furrowed. But you didn't complete the bond. I rejected you. You did. She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. And normally, that would have destroyed me. The rejection should have killed my wolf, left me human, broken. But dying changed the equation. The trauma of actual death triggered a partial awakening, enough to give me the powers, but not enough to stabilize them. That's why they're draining you. Yes. I'm running on borrowed time, using abilities that were never meant to function at half strength. She met his eyes. Every vision costs me. Every emotion I sense, every lie I detect. I've been burning through my life force for 3 years, and I'm almost empty. The color drained from Damon's face. How long do you have? At the rate I've been going? A few months. Maybe less, depending on how much I have to use my powers before this is over. There has to be a way to fix it. To complete the awakening properly. This was the part she'd been dreading. The truth that had been hanging over her since she'd first understood what she'd become. There is, she said slowly. The awakening requires the completed mate bond. If I fully bond with my destined mate, the powers will stabilize. I'll stop burning out. Hope flared in his eyes. Then we'll complete it. Tonight. Right now. It's not that simple. She pulled her hand away from where it had drifted toward his. You rejected me, Damon. Publicly, formally, with the words of severance that have been used for centuries. That rejection damaged the bond. It's still there, we can both feel it, but it's scarred. Broken in ways that can't be fixed with a simple declaration. Then how? I have to choose you. Freely, completely, knowing everything you did and everything you are. I have to open myself to the bond again, trust you with my life and my power and my future. She laughed, and it came out harsh. Do you understand what you're asking? You want me to trust the man who destroyed me. The man who chose politics over fate. The man whose rejection literally killed me. I know. His voice cracked. I know I have no right to ask. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Alara. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't beg. Don't make promises you can't keep. I've heard enough pretty words to last a lifetime. Then let me show you. He slid off the chair and onto his knees beside the bed. The Alpha King, kneeling before a servant. I've spent 3 years trying to convince myself I made the right choice. That duty and kingdom were worth more than some mystical bond one didn't understand. But I was lying. To everyone. To myself. Damon. My wolf has been silent since the night you left. The words stopped her cold. What? 3 years. His voice was barely a whisper. 3 years without hearing him. I thought it was grief, for my father, for the burdens of the crown. But it wasn't. He's been dying, Alara. My wolf has been dying ever since I spoke the words of rejection, and I was too much of a coward to admit what that meant. She stared at him. An alpha without his wolf wasn't an alpha at all. It was a death sentence in slow motion, a gradual fading that would leave him human and vulnerable. You didn't just reject me, she said slowly. You rejected us. Both of us. Your wolf and mine. I know. Tears glistened in his eyes, the Alpha King, crying. I know, and I am so sorry. For all of it. For choosing duty over you. For listening to my counsel. For being too weak to fight for what was right. Sorry doesn't fix it. I know that too. He reached up and took her hand, his grip desperate. But I'm asking you anyway. Not because I deserve forgiveness. Not because I've earned your trust. But because if you die, if I lose you again, his voice broke. I can't survive it. Not this time. The bond blazed between them, and Alara felt the truth of his words like fire in her blood. He meant it. Every word, every tear, every ounce of desperate sincerity. The man who had destroyed her was offering himself up for destruction in return. It wasn't enough. Nothing could ever be enough. But it was something. I'm not ready, she said finally. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. But I won't let your uncle win. I won't let everything I've suffered be for nothing. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. So we find another way. We stop Marcus. And maybe, when this is over, we can talk about the rest. That's all I ask. No, it isn't. She smiled sadly. But it's all I can give you right now. They had less than 24 hours. The blood moon would rise tomorrow night, and with it, Marcus's plan would reach its culmination. Elara forced herself out of bed despite her exhaustion, accepting Damon's help only when her legs threatened to give out. We need to know everything about his operation, she said, pacing slowly across the chamber. Who's involved, what resources they have, how they plan to execute the assassination. I've been watching Serafina, but she's careful. The coded letters I found, I haven't been able to break the cipher. Then we need someone who can. A knock at the door interrupted them. Damon's hand went to the knife at his belt, but the voice that came through the wood was the last one either of them expected. I know you're in there. Serafina's tone was stripped of its usual polish, raw with something that sounded like fear. And I know who she is. Let me in. We need to talk. Damon and Elara exchanged glances. Through the bond, she felt his confusion, his suspicion, and underneath it, a flicker of something that might have been hope. She's terrified, Elara murmured. And desperate. But she's not lying. You can tell that through the door? I can tell that from 20 feet away. She nodded toward the entrance. Let her in. But be ready for anything. Damon opened the door, and Serafina swept in like a woman fleeing a burning building. Her immaculate composure had cracked. Mascara smudged beneath her eyes, hair escaping its careful arrangement, hands trembling at her sides. Close it, she hissed. Lock it. They're watching me. Damon did as she asked, then positioned himself between Serafina and Elara. Start talking. I know what you found in my room. Serafina's eyes darted to Elara. And I know what she is. I've known since Marcus told me 3 years ago. Marcus. Elara felt a cold satisfaction at being right. He recruited you. He threatened me. My family. Serafina's voice cracked. The Northern Pack Alliance wasn't just politics. Marcus arranged it. He had my father killed when he tried to resist, made it look like a hunting accident. Then he came to me and said I could either cooperate or watch my mother and sisters die the same way. Why should we believe you? Damon's voice was hard. Because I just found out I'm disposable. Serafina laughed bitterly. The assassination tomorrow, I was supposed to be the weapon. Marcus gave me the knife, told me exactly where to strike. But I overheard him tonight, talking to Lord Aldrich. Once you're dead and the Northern Alliance is secured, I'm next. A tragic suicide, they said. The grieving fiancé who couldn't live with what she'd done. Elara studied her carefully. The emotions pouring off Serafina were chaotic, fear, rage, grief, and underneath it all, a desperate, clawing will to survive. She's telling the truth, Elara said. All of it. Serafina's eyes snapped to her. How can you? She stopped, remembering. The original Luna powers. You can sense lies. Among other things. Then you know I'm not your enemy. I never wanted any of this. I was a pawn, just like you. Not just like me. Elara's voice hardened. You helped him. Willingly or not, you participated in a conspiracy that's killed people. That's going to kill thousands more if we don't stop it. I know. Tears spilled down Serafina's cheeks. I know what I've done. And I'll spend the rest of my life paying for it. But right now, I have information you need, and I'm willing to trade. Trade? Damon stepped forward. You don't get to negotiate. Let her speak. Elara put a hand on his arm, and the contact sent warmth flooding through them both. What do you want? Safe passage out of the kingdom. New identity, new life, far away from Marcus and his puppets. Seraphina's chin lifted. And when this is over, the truth told about what he did to my family. I want my father's name cleared. I want the Northern Pack to know their lord was murdered by the man claiming to protect them. That's a lot to ask for a little information. It's not a little information. Seraphina reached into her bodice and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. It's everything. Every name in his network. Every council member who's been bought or threatened. Every detail of the assassination plan. She held out the paper. Including the part he didn't tell me. The part about her. Elara took the parchment. As she unfolded it, her blood ran cold. The plan wasn't just assassination. It was framework, a complete restructuring of power that required very specific conditions. Damon dead by her hand. The bond broken at the moment of death. And the blood moon to channel the released alpha power to its new host. He's been planning this for decades, she breathed. Since before you were born, Damon. Maybe since before your father was king. The cipher? Damon asked. I had one of my servants break it. Seraphina's voice was flat. A girl Marcus thought was too stupid to matter. She was the one who overheard his plans for me. Where is she now? Hidden. Safe. One of the few things I've managed to do right. Seraphina met Elara's eyes. I know you have no reason to trust me. I've done terrible things, even if I did them under threat. But I'm giving you everything I have. Please. Let me help undo this. Elara looked at the parchment in her hands. At the names listed there, a full third of Damon's council, bought and paid for by his uncle. At the timeline that showed years of careful manipulation, all leading to tomorrow night. The blood moon rises at midnight, she said. Marcus will make his move before then. He needs me close to Damon when the moment comes. Which means he's going to try to force our hand. How? Damon asked. As if in answer, bells began ringing throughout the palace. Not celebration bells, alarm bells. The sound of crisis, of emergency, of threat. Seraphina's face went white. He's doing it now. The door burst open. Guards flooded in, not Damon's personal guard, but council soldiers wearing the colors of the unified packs. At their head stood Lord Aldrich, his silver beard bristling with righteous fury. Alpha King, the old lord announced, the council has voted. The woman known as Mira, revealed to be the Omega Elara Vance, has been declared a threat to the crown and the peace of the packs. She is to be taken into custody immediately and executed at dawn. On what grounds? Damon's voice was deadly quiet. On the grounds that she is an original Luna, a bloodline banned by decree of your great-great-grandfather. On the grounds that she has bewitched you, poisoned your judgment, and plotted against your rightful betrothed. Aldrich's eyes gleamed with triumph. The Northern Pack demands justice. Lord Marcus seconds the motion. Your council has spoken. Damon didn't move. Didn't flinch. But Elara felt the fury building in him through the bond, a rage so deep and hot it threatened to consume everything in its path. The council, he said slowly, does not command the king. The council speaks for the packs. And the packs demand. The packs demand nothing. Damon stepped forward, putting himself directly between Elara and the guards. They follow. That's what it means to have a king. Aldrich's expression flickered. You cannot defy the will of your own council. The law. The law serves the king. Not the other way around. Damon's voice rang through the chamber like a war drum. And I am telling you now, Lord Aldrich, in front of these witnesses, Elara Vance is under my protection. Any hand raised against her is raised against the crown. Damon. Marcus's voice came from the doorway. The king's uncle stepped forward, his face arranged in an expression of concerned disappointment. Think about what you're doing. This woman has clouded your judgment. The council only wants to protect you. The council wants to control me. And you, Damon turned to face his uncle fully. You want me dead? Silence fell like a blade. What a terrible accusation. Marcus's voice was smooth, but Alara saw something flicker behind his eyes. Fear. I've served this family my entire life. I loved your father like a brother. I've guided you since you took the throne. You killed my father. Marcus went still. Around him, the guards shifted uneasily. I found his journals, Damon continued. I know about Alara. I know about the Wolfsbane, the conspiracy to make me reject my mate. I know you've been planning this for decades, waiting for the right moment to take what you believe you're owed. Journals can be forged. This woman has poisoned you against your own family. This woman is my fated mate. Damon's voice rose, filling the chamber with alpha power that made even Alara's knees want to buckle. The goddess herself chose her for me, and I was too blind and too weak to see it. But I see it now. He turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw everything he hadn't been able to say. Regret. Devotion. A love that had survived rejection and separation and 3 years of silent grief. If you want her, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, you come through your king. Chapter 5. The palace guards closed in like wolves circling wounded prey. Alara counted 12 of them, council soldiers in unified pack colors, their eyes glazed with something that wasn't quite loyalty. Behind them, more footsteps echoed through the corridors. Reinforcements. Marcus had planned this moment down to the last detail. You disappoint me, nephew. Marcus stepped forward, his uncle's mask finally slipping to reveal the predator beneath. I'd hoped you would see reason. Your father did, eventually. He understood that some sacrifices are necessary for the greater good. My father tried to stop you. Damon's voice was steady, but Alara felt the rage burning through the bond. That's why you killed him. Your father was weak. Sentimental. He let a mystical bond cloud his judgment, just as you're doing now. Marcus gestured to the guards. Secure them both. We'll deal with this properly. The soldiers moved forward, then stopped. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like puppets whose strings had tangled. What's wrong with them? Serafina whispered from behind Alara. Toxin. The word came to Alara unbidden, her powers reaching out to sense what was happening inside those glazed minds. They've been poisoned. Something that makes them susceptible to suggestion. Marcus's eyebrows rose. The original Luna abilities are impressive. Yes, it's a rare compound, my own refinement of an ancient recipe. A drop in their wine each evening for 3 months, and they become pliable. Most of the council has been drinking it for years. You've been drugging your own people. Disgust dripped from Damon's voice. I've been preparing for the future. A future where the Alpha bloodline serves its proper purpose, under the guidance of someone with the vision to lead. Marcus smiled. Your guards, your council, even your precious northern delegation. They're all mine now. Have been for quite some time. He snapped his fingers, and the soldiers lurched forward again, their movements smoothing out as his control reasserted itself. 2 of them grabbed Damon's arms. 3 more surrounded Alara, though none of them touched her, some instinct holding them back from direct contact with an original Luna. Don't fight, Marcus advised. You'll only make this harder on yourselves. What do you want? Alara demanded. You have us. What happens now? Now we discuss terms. Marcus circled them slowly, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. I'm not an unreasonable man, despite what my nephew believes. I've spent decades building this moment, yes, but I'm willing to be flexible about the details. He stopped in front of Damon, studying his nephew's face with something that might have been genuine regret. I raised you, you know. After your mother died, after your father retreated into his grief. I was the one who taught you to fight, to lead, to think like a king. I loved you like a son. You have a strange way of showing it. Love doesn't preclude necessity. Marcus sighed. The Alpha bloodline has become complacent. Weak. Your father nearly destroyed everything we've built by letting sentiment override strategy. I couldn't allow that to continue. So you decided to kill me and take the throne yourself. The throne was never my goal. Power, yes, but the right kind of power. The kind that shapes kingdoms from the shadows. Marcus's eyes slid to Alara. The original Luna bloodline was supposed to be extinct. When I discovered she'd survived, that she was destined to bond with you, I saw an opportunity. Alara's blood ran cold. You knew who I was before the coronation. I suspected. There were records, hidden even from your precious sealed chamber. Genealogies that traced the original line through generations of careful hiding. When I confirmed your identity, I knew I had to act. He smiled without warmth. The rejection was supposed to break you. To shatter the bonds so completely that your powers would turn inward, consuming you from within. Instead, you died, and came back stronger. Sorry to disappoint. Oh, I'm not disappointed. Merely, recalibrating. Marcus turned back to Damon. Here's my offer, nephew. You have one chance to survive this night. Reject her again. Formally, completely, with the ancient words of severance that will break the bond forever. Do that, and I'll let you live. You'll remain king, in name, at least. A figurehead for the masses while I handle the actual business of ruling. And if I refuse? Then you both die, and I take what I need from her corpse anyway. Marcus's voice hardened. The blood moon rises in 4 hours. Her power transfers to whoever she bonds with at the moment of death. If she won't choose me willingly, I'll simply kill you both and harvest what's left. You're insane. I'm practical. There's a difference. Marcus stepped back, spreading his hands. So, what will it be? Rejection and survival, or defiance and death? The guards tightened their grip on Damon's arms. Around them, more soldiers flooded into the chamber, 20, 30, more than Alara could count. All of them with that same glazed look, that same puppet-like obedience. They were surrounded. Outnumbered. Trapped. Damon looked at her. Through the bond, she felt everything he was experiencing. Fear, yes, not for himself, but for her. Rage at his uncle's betrayal. Guilt for the rejection that had started all of this. And underneath it all, burning like a star-going supernova, was love. Love he'd denied for 3 years. Love he'd tried to bury under duty and politics and carefully constructed walls. Love that had survived rejection and separation and the slow death of his wolf. I'm sorry, he said through the bond. I'm so sorry for everything. Don't. She pushed back through the connection. Don't apologize. Don't give him what he wants. I'm not going to. A fierce smile crossed his face. I'm going to do what I should have done 3 years ago. Before she could ask what he meant, Damon dropped to his knees. The guards tried to hold him upright, but he wrenched free with a burst of strength that shouldn't have been possible for a man whose wolf had been dying. He knelt before her in the center of the hostile chamber, surrounded by enemies, with death hanging over them both like a drawn blade. And he spoke the words of acceptance. I, Damon Blackwood, Alpha King of the 7 Packs, recognize you as my fated mate. His voice rang through the room, carrying the weight of ancient ceremony. I accept the bond the goddess has forged between us. I open myself to you completely, my wolf, my power, my heart, my soul. What was broken, let it be healed. What was rejected, let it be reclaimed. From this moment until my last breath, I am yours. The world exploded in silver light. Alara had thought she understood her powers. She'd spent 3 years learning to control them, to channel the visions and the emotional sensing and the lie detection. She'd thought she knew the limits of what she was, what she could become. She'd been wrong. The moment Damon spoke the words of acceptance, something inside her cracked open. Not broke. Opened, like a door that had been sealed for generations finally swinging wide. Power poured through her, ancient and vast and terrifying. The silver light that had flickered beneath her skin burst forth like a second sun, flooding the chamber with radiance that made even the drugged soldier stagger back. She felt her wolf wake fully for the first time. Not the timid omega beast she'd carried before the rejection. Not the strange, evolved creature that had returned from death. This was something else entirely, the original wolf, the first gift, the power that had been placed in her bloodline when the moon goddess herself walked the earth. She felt everything. Every wolf in the palace, their heartbeats synchronizing with hers. Every bond between mates, every pack connection, every thread of power that linked the werewolf nation together. She felt it all because she was the source. The wellspring from which all alpha power had flowed, the mother of their entire species. The guards dropped to their knees. It wasn't a choice. Their wolves couldn't help it any more than a river could help flowing downhill. The original Luna stood before them, fully awakened, and every instinct they possessed demanded submission. Even Marcus's toxin couldn't override that. What is this? Marcus stumbled backward, his composure finally cracking. This isn't possible. The original line was supposed to be diluted, weakened. You shouldn't have this much power. You didn't account for everything. Ilara's voice had changed, deeper, resonant with authority that came from something beyond her own will. You thought the rejection would destroy me. Instead, it forged me. You thought death would end me. Instead, it transformed me. She stepped forward, and the kneeling soldiers parted before her like waves before a ship's prow. 3 years, Marcus. 3 years of agony and loss and learning to survive. 3 years of visions showing me exactly what you planned, exactly what you feared. She smiled, and it was not a kind expression. You wanted me broken. Instead, I became everything you were afraid of. Marcus's hand went to his belt, pulling out a knife that gleamed with silver coating. Wolfsbane and silver, enough to kill any wolf, even an alpha. Stay back. His voice had lost its cultured smoothness. I'll use it. I swear I will. Use it, then. He lunged. The blade never touched her. Ilara didn't move, didn't raise a hand in defense. She simply was, and that was enough. The original Luna power surrounded her like armor, deflecting the knife strike with contemptuous ease. Marcus's arm twisted at an unnatural angle, the weapon clattering to the floor. You forgot something important, Ilara said as she stepped closer, forcing him to retreat. When the first alphas were created, they weren't given power unconditionally. The original Lunas could always take back what they bestowed. Terror dawned in Marcus's eyes. Real terror, the kind that stripped away pretense and planning and left only the animal beneath. No. You can't. I can. She reached out and placed her hand on his chest. I'm the source, Marcus. The wellspring. And you have drunk from waters that were never meant for you. She pushed. Not physically, she didn't need to. The power flowed from her fingertips directly into his core, reaching for the wolf that lived inside him. She felt it cowering there, a creature that had been twisted by decades of ambition and cruelty. It wasn't innocent, no part of Marcus was innocent anymore, but it was still a wolf. Still a gift from the goddess. She took it back. Marcus screamed. It was a sound that would haunt Ilara's dreams for years to come, the howl of a man feeling half his soul ripped away. His body contorted, his eyes rolling back, his limbs spasming as the bond between him and his wolf was severed with surgical precision. When it was over, he collapsed to the floor. Just a man now. Just human. Just nothing. You wanted me weak, Ilara said, looking down at the creature he'd become. Now you'll know what weakness truly feels like. The aftermath took hours. With Marcus's control broken, the drugged guards slowly returned to themselves. Most of them remembered nothing of what they'd done under his influence, a small mercy that Ilara was grateful for. The council members who had been poisoned were identified and isolated for treatment. Lord Aldrich, it turned out, had been one of Marcus's earliest victims, his opposition to Alara at the coronation stemming from years of chemical manipulation rather than genuine belief. Serafina was the first to approach them after Marcus fell. "I know I have no right to ask," she said, her voice steady despite the tears tracking down her cheeks, "but I kept my word. I gave you everything I had." Damon nodded slowly. "You did. And I'll keep mine. Safe passage, new identity, and the truth about your father told to the Northern Pack." He paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For what Marcus did to you. For what I almost helped him accomplish. You didn't know. That doesn't excuse it." Serafina managed a small smile. "Then we're even. I didn't know what I was doing either, but that doesn't excuse my part in it." She looked at Alara. "Take care of him. He's not as strong as he pretends to be." "I know." Alara reached out and took the other woman's hand. "Thank you. For coming to us when you didn't have to." "I had to. It was the only way to live with myself." Serafina squeezed her fingers once, then let go. "Goodbye, Your Majesties." She was gone within the hour, spirited away through passages that Damon's loyal guards had secured. By dawn, she would be beyond Marcus's reach, if Marcus could even reach anymore, stripped of his wolf and his power and everything he'd spent decades building. The blood moon rose over an empty courtyard, its red light illuminating a palace in chaos. But it was the chaos of healing. Of truth finally emerging. Of a kingdom waking up to realize how close it had come to destruction. The formal presentation took place 3 days later. Damon had wanted to do it immediately, but Alara had insisted on waiting. There were wounded to tend, traitors to identify, an entire power structure to rebuild. And she needed time to adjust to what she'd become. The full awakening had changed her in ways she was still discovering. Her visions came clearer now, easier to control. She could sense every wolf in the palace, feel their emotions and their loyalties like threads extending from her fingertips. And the bond with Damon, fully healed, finally complete, hummed between them like a living thing, connecting them so deeply that she sometimes couldn't tell where her thoughts ended and his began. "Are you ready?" he asked as they stood outside the great hall. "No." She smoothed down the silver gown she'd been given. Original Luna colors, according to the ancient texts they'd recovered from the sealed chamber. "But I don't think I'll ever be ready. So we might as well do it now." He smiled and took her hand. "That's my queen." The doors swung open. The great hall was packed, representatives from all 7 packs, council members old and new, servants and soldiers and everyone who could fit through the doors. They fell silent as Damon led her forward, their eyes following her progress with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. She understood their hesitation. 3 days ago, she'd been a kitchen maid with a false name. Now she was being presented as their Luna, their queen, the wellspring of all alpha power. It was a lot to accept. But as she walked, something shifted. She felt it first as a ripple through the crowd, wolves responding to her presence, instincts older than memory recognizing what she was. One by one, they bowed. Not the formal courtesy due to a queen, but the deep submission of wolves acknowledging their origin. By the time she reached the dais, the entire hall was on its knees. "I present to you," Damon announced, his voice ringing through the silence, "Alara Vance, last heir of the original Luna bloodline. Not as the maid I rejected 3 years ago, but as the woman who chose to save a kingdom that had given her nothing. My fated mate. My Luna. My queen." The hall erupted in howls, the traditional werewolf acclamation, hundreds of voices raised in unified acknowledgement. Alara felt tears prick her eyes despite herself. She'd spent so long being nothing, being invisible, being less than. Now she was everything. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. That night, alone in their chambers for the first time since everything had changed, Alara felt it. A flutter in her stomach. so subtle she almost dismissed it as nerves. Then the vision crashed through her. She saw them, two pups, tangled together in the way of siblings who had shared a womb. One with silver eyes like hers, already showing signs of the original Luna power. One with golden eyes like Damon's, an alpha in miniature. Her children. Their children. But the vision didn't stop there. Behind the pups, in shadows that seemed to stretch back centuries, something watched. Something ancient and patient and hungry. Something that had waited generations for the original Luna bloodline to return. The vision shattered, and Alara gasped back to reality. What is it? Damon was beside her instantly, his hands on her shoulders, his wolf pressing against hers with worried intensity. What did you see? She looked at him, this man who had broken her and saved her, who had rejected her and chosen her, who had knelt before an army of enemies to claim her as his own. He deserved the truth. He deserved to know what was coming. I'm pregnant, she whispered. Twins. Joy blazed across his face, brilliant and unguarded. Alara. There's more. She took his hands and held them tight. Something is coming. Something that has been waiting for someone like me to exist. I don't know what it is or what it wants, but it's been watching. For a very long time. The joy in his expression didn't fade, but something harder joined it. Determination. Resolve. The look of a king preparing to defend everything he loved. Then we'll face it together, he said. Whatever comes. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. He pulled her close, and she felt his heartbeat sync with hers, their bond humming with shared strength. We've survived rejection and death and conspiracy. We'll survive this too. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that their love was enough to face whatever ancient horror lurked in her visions. But as she leaned into his embrace, watching the blood moon finally set beyond their window, she knew the truth. This isn't an ending, my king, she whispered against his chest. It's just the beginning. And in the shadows of her mind, something very old smiled in agreement. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.